Oh, just another weekend in mid-April. Transfers, committing to other schools, 2025 recruits committing to Pitt. There was actually a little bit, I don't want to say it was a busy weekend for Pitt sports, but there were enough things that happened to give us things to talk about between Dayon Hayes transferring to Colorado and Bryce Yates, the 2025 wide receiver recruit, committing to Pitt. There was enough to discuss, and we've certainly got a lot to dive into. So let's get your week started here on the Monday edition of the Morning Pitt on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Yeah, those are pretty much the two big news stories this weekend, Dayon Hayes and Bryce Yates. And I'm not sure if I would say either one of those was a surprise. I think we suspected Yates might be the commitment when Pat Narduzzi tweeted out his Pitt is it tweet on, I forget what day that was, Thursday maybe. We suspected Yates might be the commitment. We'll talk about what he means for the recruiting class. And then Dayon Hayes going to Colorado. I can't say that was a huge surprise. I think I sort of thought Colorado would be one of the schools in the mix for Hayes when he went into the transfer portal. And the reason I thought Colorado would be one of the schools in the mix for Hayes when he went into the transfer portal is because they were one of the schools in the mix for him in December. You say, well, he was never in the transfer portal in December. No, he wasn't, because guess what? You don't need to be in the transfer portal in December, or you don't need to be in the transfer portal to have schools in the mix for you or pursuing you. You might hear people say some version of the sentiment that there's no such thing as tampering, and that's the reality right now. On a number of levels. On one hand, there's no such thing as tampering because there are enough sort of buffers in place of it's never coach at a school talking to player at another school who's not in the portal. It's people not even on the football staff, not even on the coaching staff or employed by the university, but operating on the university or the football program or whatever program's behalf, speaking to people operating on the player's behalf. And it might not even be a direct relative or something like that. But the messages can get through. They can get conveyed, they can get sent, and they can be received. And most of them are. Of course, at the same time, we can say, tampering is not a real thing anymore, because even if you do it, actual by definition tampering of a coach talking to a player, I'm not sure that it matters. I'm not sure that any of it matters as far as the rules go. And the reality right now is, it's been a cliche for as long as forever. If you're not cheating, you're not trying. It doesn't apply in college sports because I don't know if there is really anything that is cheating, at least when it comes to the transfer portal and going after players and that kind of thing. I don't think there's anything that really qualifies as cheating anymore. And so it's not even, if you're not cheating, you're not trying. It's just a question of, are you trying? It's a question of, are you trying to make your team better for next season? Are you trying to improve? And if you're not trying, then you're not trying. And everybody's trying. And quite frankly, probably could come back to this later, but since this dovetails into it nicely, if you're Pitt, you need to have word in the ear of every Group of 5 and FCS All-American defensive end in the country. Every single one. And maybe they don't all fit, but you at least shake the tree a little bit and you look into them. Every single guy. You say to me, well, not every Group of 5 All-American defensive end is in the portal. It doesn't matter. What did I just say? There's no such thing as tampering. You need to be in their ears. And whether that's Pat Narduzzi making the calls, which it shouldn't be, or Tim Doust, which it shouldn't be, or anybody actually who works in the South Side or works in that building, it shouldn't be. But it should be the right people getting the message to the right people. Because if you're not trying, you're not trying. And Deion Sanders is certainly trying. I don't think there's any question about that. Coach Prime has been trying since he arrived at Colorado. Made a big deal of it 2 years ago. When he first arrived, ran a ton of guys off and reloaded the transfer portal. And then is doing the same thing in his second offseason. He's run a bunch of guys off. They've got 30-some guys in the portal or something like that, and they're going to rebuild their whole roster with guys out of the portal. A bunch of defensive linemen. They already got Sam Okunlola in December. So that's one defensive end from Pitt. They got another one from Pitt, obviously in Dayon Hayes, and they got, I think, 2 or 3 other guys. They got one guy from, I have to look up where he came from. From Arizona State, BJ Green. He had 6 sacks last year, which compared to Hayes and Okunlola, that's That's a ton. You got another former 4-star guy who's transferring in. Defensive end. They've got a 4-star defensive end recruit coming in, but they've really reloaded, particularly this weekend. They've got like 3 or 4 defensive line transfers this weekend, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you what I think or know about Colorado's depth chart at defensive end. I don't know what that means for Dayon Hayes and Sam Okunlola. I don't think it matters. It doesn't matter where they are in the depth chart. We talked about this a lot last week, and somebody said that I was like killing the players for making these decisions. No, I mean, go for the reason that you go. You know what I mean? Go for whatever reason motivates you. Whatever reason motivates you to go into the transfer portal, it's fine. Pursue it. And whatever reason motivates you to choose the school that you choose out of the transfer portal, that's fine. Choose it. That's fine. You know, and if that motivation is money, hey, it's one of the oldest motivations in the book. There's nothing wrong about that. But don't talk about opportunity or playing time when you're in the mix with like 6 other transfer defensive linemen. And to Okunlola, you know, Okunlola's credit, I don't think he ever said anything about opportunity or anything like that. I don't know if he said anything about anything. But you know, Hayes, Dayon talks about, you know, wanting to go somewhere where he's a chance to win. I mean, Colorado went 4-8 last year. They won 1 game more than Pitt. And you know, maybe they'll be better this year. They also had one of the worst defenses in the country last season, which maybe, I mean, creates a little bit of opportunity for Dayon Hayes. Nobody on that team for Colorado had more than 5 sacks last year, which is pretty similar to Pitt, because nobody really had more than 5 sacks for Pitt last year either. But like, don't talk to me about going somewhere where there's a better opportunity to win, or a better opportunity for playing time, or better opportunity to get developed for the NFL. You know, maybe you found those things, maybe you didn't, but just call it what it is. Like, at this point, I don't think anyone's really going to bat an eye if a player comes out and says, well, you know, I was obviously in a comfortable place. I was close to home. I was playing in a defense that really features the defensive ends. I probably had a good chance to play well. But, you know, I had an opportunity to get a pretty big bag this offseason. So I took the bag. And there'll be 1 or 2 old-timers who will, you know, wag their finger at you about that. But for the most part, everybody already sort of assumes you're doing it for the bag. You know, everybody assumes you're going to get the money, so go get it. And you might as well be honest about it. Yeah, like, I mean, if nothing else in this era of college sports, we can have some honesty. You know, I don't think that's the worst thing. But Dayon Hayes going to Colorado, and Colorado was very much pushing for Dayon Hayes in December. There's no question in my I know this. Can't say for a fact because you never know anything for a fact, but I'm fairly confident that Dayon Hayes was being courted by Colorado in December, immediately after the season ended, probably before it ended, and then again after he announced that he was returning to Pitt. I think there were continued conversations between Dayon Hayes and Colorado, by which I mean, you know, affiliates of such and all those buffer layers in between and whatever. And so Colorado has wanted Dayon Hayes for a while. I saw some people bring up about how Pat Narduzzi talked some smack about, you know, Deion Sanders, and, you know, there was that big sort of Cold War in the media last offseason, and Deion said he wouldn't know Pat Narduzzi if he walked in the room or whatever. Like, and so I've seen some people ask, like, oh, do we think this is because this is, you know, the Deion Sanders is trying to get Dayon Hayes and Sam Okunlola as like payback to Narduzzi? And honestly, I mean, I don't have prime time on the speed dial, so I haven't called him to ask him, but I honestly don't think so. I mean, I honestly don't think Deion Sanders cares what Pat Narduzzi thinks or says about him. I honestly don't. I think Deion Sanders had one of the worst defenses in the country last year and wanted to get better. And so he jettisoned like, you know, a third of his roster, turned over like a third of his roster, or sent a third of his roster, not even turned over, because you turn over another like 15 or 20 guys just to graduation, in addition to the 30 or so they've lost to the portal. So turned over close to like half his roster and went out looking to improve his defense. And again, they didn't have anybody with more than 5 sacks. So he went looking for players at schools probably where he felt like they would have a chance to poach those players. You know, like I don't know if he was necessarily going to try and go head-to-head with like an NIL machine, you know, at a school like A&M or Tennessee or someplace like that. But I imagine, like, if I'm Deion Sanders and I've got a decent-sized NIL operation at Colorado, I'm looking at the schools where they've got a productive player at a position where I need one, at a school that I'm pretty sure we can outspend. And, you know, I think Pitt probably fits that bill. And Okunlola as a young defensive end, Hayes as a veteran experienced guy, both with moderate, maybe low moderate production, at a school where he can probably outspend them. And he probably did, you know, so those guys they're both Buffaloes now, or both Buffalo. They pluralize that. How do they do that at Colorado? I think they're the Buffaloes, right? Well, Hayes and Okunlola will be out there. It's funny. South Carolina became Pitt South this year with Bengali Kamara and DeAndre Jules and Buddy Mack, who went there as a walk-on. And Colorado has become Pitt West with Okunlola and Dayon Hayes. Ultimately, and I mean, we talked about this when Hayes went into the portal. It's a real problem. The depth chart at defensive end, the numbers that they have left available, they don't have much. We've got them projected for about 8 scholarship defensive ends if Bam Brima stays at defensive end, if Ty Uhas stays at defensive end. But Uhas is a true freshman. I can't imagine they're going to be counting on him anyway. But it's Brima and Nate Matlack as the seniors, Jimmy Scott as a redshirt sophomore, Maverick Grazio and David Ojebwe as redshirt freshmen, and then the true freshmen, Zach Crothers, Sincere Edwards, and Ty Uhas. That's after the departures of Hayes and Okunlola and the season-ending injury of Nate Temple and the move of Nakai Johnson to defensive tackle. So you had these sort of 4 pieces of attrition from the defensive end position, and all of a sudden it's a lot smaller than it would have been. Now, you know, Okunlola, Ojebwe, Matlack, there was sort of overlap there. Maybe if Okunlola stays, they don't go get Ojebwe. You know, I don't know. Maybe they don't get Matlack. I'm not sure. But that's where they stand with defensive ends. And it's a dicey situation. It really is. Overall numbers update. By my latest count, we're going to put a new scholarship board up on the website at Panther-Lair.com today. You see the website below, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. It's the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet. We have football, basketball, recruiting coverage, and it's all right there at Panther-Lair.com, in addition to message boards where you can hang out with hundreds and thousands of other Pitt fans. All these things we talk about here on the Morning Pitt, all these topics we cover, we're talking about them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the message boards at Panther-Lair.com. So make sure you check out the website and check out the message boards to join the conversation. And while I'm at it, like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We need like 20 subscribers to get to 4,000. I mean, come on, guys. I want to get to 4,000 by the end of the month. Okay, let's rally the troops here. Let's get the operation moving. Let's get 20 more subscribers to the YouTube channel, and we can move on and be real happy about it. But so we're going to put the scholarship board up on Panther-Lair.com today. Our latest updated number, we've got them projected at 88. 88 projected scholarships. That means they still need to drop 3 to get down to the 85. That is the NCAA's limit. And then drop more if they want to add players. And we're seeing them go after defensive linemen. We've seen them active with a couple wide receivers. So some options exist there, but if they're going to get those guys, they're going to need these numbers to drop. And I think there's a few options still on the roster where they can get, 3 or 4 more open scholarship spots to add some of these guys, but they're going to need those spots to open to make room for additional transfers to come in. And then on the recruiting side, Pitt got a commitment. I think it came on Thursday, but the commitment actually got announced yesterday. It's Bryce Yates. He's a wide receiver prospect at Matawaka High School in Chesterfield, Virginia. Let's go with Matawaka until somebody from Matawaka tells us it's something else. But Yates is about 6 foot, 165 pounds is what he lists himself at. So, I mean, you probably could take an inch or 2 off that, put him around 5'10 or so, maybe 5'9. Not a bigger wide receiver, but a playmaking guy. And this is the thing that stands out the most to me. Last season, he had 79 catches for 1,193 yards and 15 touchdowns in a 14-game season. Those are huge numbers. Like, I look, obviously in what we do, with covering recruiting, covering high school guys, I look at a lot of high school stats, and they'll be like big time wide receivers, and they don't put up those kind of numbers. They don't catch 79 passes. They don't have 1,200 receiving yards. They don't score 15 touchdowns. Some guys do, but that's top end production, top line production in the state of Virginia, where there's talented football for sure. He also had a touchdown. He had a rushing touchdown. Yates did. He had a kick return touchdown and a pick six. He had 6 interceptions, team leading 6 interceptions. Returned one of them for a touchdown. So he scored 18 touchdowns. He was his team's leader in receptions and receiving yards. Led the team to like a 10-4 record. They think they made it to the state semifinals or something like that. And Yates committed to Pitt. Like I say, he announced it yesterday. Committed on Thursday, but made his official announcement yesterday. Other Power 5 offers, Duke, Maryland was in there. Those were the 2 other Power 5 offers. A number of other schools working on him as well from the Group of 5 level. So no, not the kind of offer sheet you want to always be beating at the very least the West Virginias and Virginia Techs. In this case you'll take the Dukes and the Marylands. But Yates is the first wide receiver to commit to Pitt in this class. He's the 3rd recruit to commit to Pitt in this class. They've also got a quarterback, Mason Heinschel from Ohio, remember, from Oregon, Ohio, and then a defensive end, Trevor Summers from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Summers committed in February, Heinschel committed in March, and now Yates is committed in April. So I guess they'll just do one a month, right? There'll be one in May, one in June, one in July. Of course, there's going to be more than one in June. There's no doubt about it. But Pitt's got 3 commitments in this class. They're all 5-star recruits. They're all sort of lower end 5-star recruits. They're all 3-star recruits, sort of lower end 3-star recruits. I was looking at the Rivals rating for each of those guys is 5.5 or 5.6. So that's why I had the number 5 stuck in my head. They're all 3-star recruits. And this is the territory where Pitt traffics, right? Pitt largely relies on 3-star recruits. They're the kind of guys that Pitt gets. And a number of times, those 3-star recruits have turned out to be really, really good. Jordan Addison was a 3-star recruit. Kalijah Cansey was a 3-star recruit. Patrick Jones and Rashad Weaver were 2-star recruits. Dane Jackson was a 2-star recruit. Pitt's main currency in recruiting personnel out of high school, recruiting players out of high school, Pitt's currency is the 2- and 3-star recruits, the guys that they evaluate, that they think fit what they do really well, and the guys, that they're able to then coach and develop into quality players. And they've done it a bunch, and granted, the list of names we would run down here of like 3-star guys who ended up being really good, they all happen to be on one side of the ball, but like Haba Baldonado was really good. Eric Hallett and Brandon Hill were really good. Marquez Williams was really good. Obviously Servassier Dennis and Weaver and Jones were all 2-star recruits who ended up being really good. But, you can go down pretty long list of guys, particularly on the defensive side, who were 2 or 3-star prospects who ended up being really good at Pitt because the coaches had an idea of what they were looking for. They found the guys who fit what they wanted to do, and they were able to coach them and develop them. The evaluation was good, and then the development was good. And those are the 2 parts of the puzzle if you're Pitt, and you're going to sort of live in this 3-star land. And I feel like 3-stars are the guys that can kind of go either way. You're going to have booms and busts at every sort of level of the ranking system, whether it's 5-star, 4-star, 3-star, 2-star. You're going to have guys who pan out and end up being awesome, guys who surprise, guys who disappoint. That's natural. But I feel like 3-star, you probably find the greatest number of players. There's more 3-stars than there are 4-stars. There's more 4-stars than there are 5-stars. There's probably more 3-stars than there are 2-stars, although that one might be close. But when people look at the NFL draft and like, oh, look at all the 3-stars who got drafted. Well, there are more 3-stars available to choose from. And so you really end up in that sort of could go either way territory. And what will ultimately decide which way it goes with the 3-star guys is whether you evaluated them well and whether you coach and develop them well. And, I mean, as we look at that slideshow, I'm seeing like, Rasheem Biles. I mean, Julian Duggar was just on there, but Javon McIntyre, Rasheem Biles. I mean, these guys are all like panning out and looking really good, and they were all 3-star recruits. I mean, we get into a conversation of, oh, maybe they were underrated or this or that, but you see a pattern of taking a lot of 3-stars and getting pretty good results out of a lot of them. Now, it hasn't been, in the case of Bryce Yates, as we flip over to the offensive side, you don't find quite as many examples there. You find some. Addison is a big one. Izzy Abanikanda, of course, is one. You find some examples, but not as many as you find on offense, as you find on defense. So there's a little bit of a, you don't put as much faith on that side of the ball as you do on the defensive side of the ball. But again, these are the kind of guys that Pitt has largely recruited, and it's been the kind of guys that they've recruited that have led to a lot of their success, and then guys that they've recruited who have, maybe been a part of the seasons that didn't go so well. I think Yates is a playmaker. I think you watch his film. I mean, he's just making plays. He catches a ton of passes. He gets a lot of yards. Obviously scores a lot of touchdowns. He has 18 touchdowns, 15 of them receiving touchdowns. He's a good player. A little bit small, but that's sort of the MO, I think, with this new recruiting staff, and kind of, I don't think they're specifically looking for smaller guys, but they're willing to take smaller guys if they have some of the other attributes like speed and flexibility and just athletic ability. And I think that's what they see in Yates, and not as much size, but definitely a lot of those other abilities and skills to be able to make plays. So this class is coming together. 3 guys so far, all 3-stars, sort of looking like a Pitt recruiting class that we've seen over the last, how many years? 10 years or more? It's looking like what we've seen. Now, there's a long time this class will be filled out with a lot of guys, but we're, that's where they're at right now. So that was the news from the weekend. Pitt got a commitment. They had one of their transfer departures end up committing to a school. I feel like, I have my legal pad here, and I plan things out. I try to plan out the morning pits, what we're going to talk about each day and all this stuff. And I kind of read it ahead, but I sort of know that a bunch will usually get scratched out because somebody's going to go into the portal. They're going to land somebody out of the portal. Who knows what's going to happen, but there will always be news that develops. So we'll always have something to talk about here on the Morning Pit. So make sure you like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. That way you won't miss any of our episodes of the Morning Pit. And, of course, tune in on Wednesday night for our live show. Every week we go live at Wednesday night at around 8 o'clock for the live Panther-Lair show. Me and Jim Hammett talking with you about Pitt sports topics. So make sure you tune in for that. Check out the website below, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. For the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet, you won't miss anything at Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. Thanks so much for tuning in today. I appreciate it. I hope you had a great weekend. Hope your Monday gets off to a great start, and we will catch up with you tomorrow on the Morning Pit right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.